Hey guys, Chris here from Carolat Farm. Welcome. It is super hot and humid out here. We're now on day 2 or 3 of our first major summer heat wave. You know, the temperatures have been anywhere from 96 to 98 degrees. And the heat index, you know, when you add in the humidity and all, is putting it well over 100. So it's really hot, and the little horses, you know, our minis, have just been sweating so much. I feel so bad for them, but they've got cold water, they've got clean stalls, they've got plenty of hay. And my job now over the next day or so is just to continue checking in on them frequently to make sure that, one, their water troughs don't get too hot, because if the water gets too hot, my concern is they will stop drinking, and that could be really sort of detrimental for them. So they definitely need to keep drinking, just like I do. I've got my bottle with me, kind of walking around with my water bottle. So I'll go check on them middle of the afternoon, and then, you know, just keeping a close eye on Sweetheart, because given her breathing condition with her being heavy and all, the heat does make it a little harder for her. So I just want to keep an eye on her to make sure that she doesn't have any sort of, you know, breathing attack. And then just trying to stay cool myself. As I catch up with you this morning, I am standing out on the front porch, and I don't know if you can tell, but I have my fans all going pretty high. I hope it's not too loud. But keeping the air moving is helpful. And that is something that I don't have for my horses, which I really wish I did. That's one thing I'm really lamenting right now, is that we don't have power run to the barn, and so the minis don't have fans. That would make me feel so much better if I knew they had fans, because this air moving, you know, I appreciate, and I know they would too. So that is something we're working on. We do want to do it properly though. We want to dig a trench and actually run like legitimate power to the barn. And that way we can run lights in the winter. And then really it's the fans. Those are the two things that I would really, really like to have that we don't yet have hooked up. So that's something that's kind of a work in progress. But because it has been so hot, you can see it's almost the 4th of July, we're getting ready. Because it has been so hot around here, I have gotten a really early start to the day. And I went out to the barn, I did all of my barn chores, got everyone settled. I even then watered all of our fruit trees and bushes, and still was able to make it back into the house, I think well before 10. So, you know, now that it's middle of the day, I'm catching up on some things. And it was just so hot this morning that rather than start filming when I was out and about, I just kind of jumped out there and got right to it. So today I'm gonna kind of go back in time, and I'm gonna show you what I was doing this morning, because some of our like high heat preparations that we're doing for the horses, I think are really important to share. So I hope you enjoy. Something else I thought I should share. Yesterday afternoon, I think I was in the kitchen, I was doing something, and I looked outside and I saw all 4 of our minis were just rip-roaring around in this heat. And so I got up and I got my phone out, and they just had a case of the zoomies. They were zooming all over all of the paddocks. They were, you know, just galloping from the new side paddock up into the front ring and then back into the back, and they were just here, there, and everywhere. And I was a little worried because it was so hot. Like, to me, that's not the time to be rip-roaring around. But they did, and it was all of them, even Sweetheart. And so once they calmed down, I went right down to the barn, because I really wanted to check, most importantly on Sweetheart. Because of her breathing condition, I was concerned that all of that running around in this heat could actually cause her to have like a breathing attack, sort of like an asthma attack. And so luckily she was okay. I mean, she was breathing rather heavily, but I kept checking on her, and she was able to like calm down and relax in the stall. And so fortunately she was fine. When they say minis get the zoomies, they really truly do. You know, today is the hottest day of the year so far. It's well above 96 degrees. It's super humid. And these silly little minis are tearing around. They've got to be getting so hot. I'll go check on them when they're finished, but boy, they're just silly and feeling pretty good. This morning it is super hot and humid already. I'm out picking. The horses have already had their morning grain, and you can see where everyone is already huddled in the shade. You know, Shenanigans and Rockstar are up by the barn, and Sweetheart and Snuggles are grazing off to the left in the shade. It's just so hot. So of course this morning, with it being so hot, I'm checking on the water, both here and in the barnyard where we have that red tub. But I want to check it for the temperature, because I have noticed that as the temperatures rise during the daytime hours, our troughs are beginning to heat up, and the water was quite hot. So I think what I will do today, which is something I did yesterday as well, is I will come out around 1 or 2 o'clock this afternoon, and I will check the temperature, and if need be, I will scoop water out and add more cold, because it's very important that these horses have water that they're willing to drink. And that water was so hot yesterday, I don't imagine hardly anyone would find it refreshing enough to drink. My red tub of water here, it does sit in the morning shade a little bit longer than the gray tub, and it is currently cooler. Here in the barnyard, we do have some good morning shade, which is nice. But as we approach middle of the day, we do start to lose it. And you can see Sweetheart here. I mean, she is already beginning to sweat. And this heat is making her breathing a little heavier. You know, she is heavy. And so I do want to keep an eye on her, and I'll come and check on her periodically throughout the day. I am not usually one to braid my horse's manes while they're turned out, but Sweetheart was so hot and sweaty yesterday with this long mane that I have braided it, and I have given her my hair tie, and I'm hoping that she does get a little relief from that. Their mane, their forelock here, and even, you know, their tail, of course, and then the feathery hairs down by their feet, their fetlocks, those aid the horse in fly and insect kind of protection. And so I have taken that mane away because it will not cover her neck, therefore the flies will land on her perhaps. But I am hopeful that the trade-off of being a little cooler will be worth it. So again, she'll be turned up with her braid today, and I hope that she'll be a little bit cooler. Snuggles is reminding me here that not only do horses need good fresh water, preferably cool this time of year, but they need a salt block. My horses here have a salt mineral block that they really enjoy. They spend a lot of time on, which tells me that they need these extra added nutrients that they're maybe not getting from the grass or the hay. So if you don't have salt blocks in your stall, consider putting one in your field. If you're feeding your horse grain, many horses will get all of the salt and nutrients they need from that. But a simple salt block or salt mineral block such as this, most horses really appreciate. Even little Shenanigans says he would really like some salt, please. It's always a good idea to provide it free choice, and then if they need it or want it, it's available. And if not, they can just steer clear. I have just finished putting my morning hay into the stalls, and I have actually split 2 flakes. 1 flake into the 3 corners of this stall, and 1 flake into the 3 corners of the neighboring stall over there. I think Sweetheart and Shenanigans are currently next door. But I think the horses will likely want to duck indoors more today than perhaps recent days because of this heat. And so I am putting a little extra hay here just in case they should want it. We've got Rocky and Shenanigans sharing in this corner here. You know, my minis, all 4 of them get along pretty well. And Sweetheart, she's just coming to kind of say hi here. Hi, sweet girl. So they're good to go now. Their water is cool enough. They have hay. I've picked everything. But I will be back in a few hours to check on everyone. And I'll also not only check on their water and their hay, but I'll keep an eye on Sweetheart's breathing to make sure it doesn't become too labored. But so far this morning, she looks pretty comfortable. I'm getting ready to go down and check on the minis. It's about midday. I see that they are over here grazing below the garden, and beside the back field, that's the newest paddock area we've opened. So I'm gonna go check on them, see how they're doing, but I really also want to check on their water troughs. I wanna make sure they're not getting too hot. And if you can't tell, I've got my hair up in a little bun here. You know, when it's hot like this, the hair has to go up. I can't stand for it to be down on my neck. So either it's braided, it's in a bun, or even if it's in a ponytail, I usually will braid my ponytail. So that's how you know it's pretty hot, is when the hair goes up. So here we have our red tub, and it still feels cool to the touch. So that is very, very good. And I'm gonna now go and check on the other trough that's over in the back. Something I'll mention, in the winter time, you know, we were checking the water frequently because we wanted to make sure that the water wasn't too cold for the horses. If it was too cold, I was worried they wouldn't want to drink. And now here we are, it's the exact opposite. I am checking the water multiple times a day to make sure it's not too hot, again, for fear of them not wanting to drink it or not wanting to drink as much as they would naturally drink. And so those are just things to be mindful of, that, you know, some horses are more particular. I know, for example, in the winter time, Rocky really preferred to drink warm water versus the really cold water. It wasn't frozen water, but it was still ice cold. Whereas Sweetheart and Shenanigans, they didn't so much mind the cold water, but Rocky definitely preferred warm water. And so that's why I am really checking our water carefully now, because I want to make sure that I don't have a horse that might have a similar affinity for cold water, because I would hate for them to not drink enough because they're preferring or waiting or holding out for colder water. So this water is warmer than the red tub, and I have noticed that before, that this gray trough does heat up faster. My husband and I were talking, you know, he's a little more informed about these things, but I believe it's a surface area thing, as well as the fact that this is clearly a darker trough, which is going to be warming up faster in the sun. But it also sits in the sun here all afternoon, and I had originally had the trough over here. You can see there are two little dead spots of grass, and I am going to go ahead and move it this afternoon because this spot over here is a little more ideal, and it is in the afternoon shade of this tall tulip poplar here. So when I come back out in a couple of hours to check the water once again, I will go ahead and try to pail out water and move it. You can see little Shenanigans here is quite sweaty. He was the sweatiest yesterday, and he also has the most winter coat still on him. He's still a little shaggy. He is not completely shed out. And then Sweetheart over here, she has a very slick coat, and she currently does not look too sweaty, not as much as she was yesterday, but I also recognize that we have not yet hit the day's high temperature. So I will keep coming and checking on these guys over the next couple of hours. And, you know, fingers crossed they don't get to running around like yesterday. I don't think that was a very wise thing to do. Sweetheart's coming over. She might want to say hi. You can see she still has her little summertime braid in. I'm glad to see she's not been rubbing it. I was a little worried it might bother her. She's not accustomed to having her mane braided, but she seems to be tolerating it pretty well. And her neck is not that sweaty, which makes me happy. I'm always surprised with Rocky here. Again, these guys, they love to come and say hi. He has this almost black coat. He is not a true black. He is dark brown, but he does not seem to get quite as sweaty as the rest of our horses. And I really thought that being so dark, that he would have the hardest time in the heat and the humidity, but that does not seem to be the case. Who knew? So we've just completed our first kind of midday check. Everyone seems to be doing well. The horses do not seem to be too hot or too terribly sweaty at this point in time, which I'm very happy to report. And the water troughs are still at a suitable temperature, but I will want to come back out again in maybe another hour and a half tops and really check on them again, because they can quickly start to heat up, and that's when I want to make sure I get some cold water in them to bring their temperatures back down. So I'll be back out in a little bit, but so far, so good. I have gone ahead and put my sun shirt on because I am pretty sure that water is going to be hot. I'm going to even go so far as to turn the hose on and pull it down there with me so that I don't have to be going back and forth. You know, we don't want to be wasting or using more steps than we have to in this heat. So let's go check on that water. Another summertime tip here is to let the hot water that has built up in your hose go ahead and spray out before you go putting it in a water trough or trying to spray a horse or something else. You know, I mean, the water gets really, really hot in the hose. So as I stretch the hose down towards the water troughs, I'm just letting it run because that morning water that was in it is really hot. So the water is definitely getting warm, and I think I will scoop out maybe a good third of this red tub, and then I'll fill it with cold water, but I want to make sure that it definitely cools down. Now that we have our red tub filling with some nice cold water, let's go check on the gray one. So my suspicion here is that this gray trough is going to be even warmer than the red trough. When we checked it a few hours ago, the red one was still a little cooler, but it's quite warm now. So let's see what this gray trough feels like. You know, it sits, when I moved it the other day to reach better with the hose, I put it here in the corner. However, it sits in the daylight, the sunshine, you know, the direct sunshine pretty much all day now. So let's see how it feels. So yeah, so this trough, I mean, I bet this gray trough is every bit of 5 or more degrees warmer than the red one. And so I think it would be best, since tomorrow is going to be another really hot day, for me to go ahead and scoop out all of the water that's in here, and then I'll move it over to where I showed you earlier. It used to sit over here, and you can see the shade is even beginning to reach this way now. So I will put the trough back where it used to be. I've now moved my hose to a different spigot, and it should more easily reach once we move the trough. Perfect timing. Just filled to the brim. I'm not sure if you've noticed, guys, but look, no stump. My husband has been trying to get this stump up for years. It was an old pine tree that we took down a long time ago. And the stump had just been taking so long to kind of break down and decompose. And finally, over the weekend, he was able to pull it up. So no more stumps sitting beside the feedlots. As I started filling the trough behind me, I then remembered why I moved it from this spot to a slightly closer spot to the corner. There's another dead spot where the trough had been. That was because the ground here is quite uneven. It's very downhill. And so I'm going to take a piece of wood to help level my trough out, similar to how you could take like a piece of folded paper and put it under a chair or table leg. I'm going to use a fence board to level out my trough. Now that I have this board under one side of my trough on the low end, it is sitting much more level, and I will start filling it now. You know, another reason, as I was beginning to fill, not only did I remember about it being unlevel here, but I also remembered that a reason I didn't like it here earlier in the spring was because when it sat beneath this tree, which now provides the shade and is exactly what we want, but in the springtime I was getting a lot of debris and pollen and leaves that were falling, and they were just making the trough dirtier, kind of getting grimy fast. So there are pros and cons, but right now the shade from this tree is going to outweigh any sort of debris or grime that it might cause. So back to filling. I'm distractible, guys. I'm sorry. As I was getting ready to pick up the hose, I saw this. This is a cicada shell. A little cicada bug came out of this and left his little exoskeleton behind. You may have heard the cicadas this morning. I was filming and they were quite loud, so that's what that is. I have seen a couple of those around the farm now. They're always kind of funny. It's now about 2 o'clock. We have filled the trough that we moved here. It's full of nice cold water, so I feel much better about the horses being out here this afternoon in this pretty extreme heat. You know, I can see them from where I'm standing. They're all a little sweaty, but they all seem content enough to still be out grazing, which is a good sign. And I will come back and check on them again, you know, another time in another hour or two. But so far, everyone's doing well. And so I want to say thank you so much for joining us today as we really, you know, continue to check on these minis in this intense heat that we're currently experiencing. And, you know, stay cool yourself. And if you have animals, make sure they have plenty of good cold water. Check on them frequently. And as I say that, I should also mention, once I get back up to the house, giving our cats nice cold water outside on the front porch in the shade is another thing on my to-do list now. So the horses have cold water, now the cats need cold water, and then I'm gonna get some cold water. So thanks again, check back soon, and we hope to see you again. Bye guys.